Namaskar, this is CVR English and it's time to roll the headlines with me, ANUKRITI Sharma. PM Modi meets the CMs and the deputy CMs of the BJP-ruled states at the party headquarters in Delhi. Aam Aadmi Party MP Swati Maliwal demands justice for students' death in old Rajendra Nagar, says Delhi will not run like this. I will raise this issue in the parliament. In Maharashtra's Kolhapur district, relief force carries out relief work as the flood-like situation continues in the area. In Telangana's Hyderabad, Minister Komati Reddy Venkat Reddy visited the Bhagyalakshmi temple and offered prayers ahead of the Bonalu festival. Hello and welcome to the National Primetime this week, a show where we recap the highlights of the week gone by. US President Joe Biden has made a major announcement. He won't be fighting in the upcoming presidential election. He finally bowed to weeks of pressure. But what was the final straw? What happened just before he threw in the towel? Well, we have the details. So Biden is out of the race, but he's endorsed a replacement, his Vice President Kamala Harris. Harris has hit the campaign trail running and she's trying to energize the younger voters. We've all this and more lined up for you. Let's get started. It's time for our lead story, Biden's change of heart. So Biden's out of the race for now, but what convinced him to drop out? What changed his mind? Even last week, his campaign was motoring on. His advisors said that Biden would stay in the race. But then last Sunday, the big announcement came. So what changed in those 48 hours? Well, Biden was not at the White House last weekend. He was in his hometown, Delaware. He was still recovering from his Wuhan virus symptoms. With him were a handful of supporters, like White House counselor Steve Ricchetti, campaign advisor Mike Donilon, Deputy Chief of Staff Annie Tomasini, and Jill Biden's advisor Anthony Bernal. They were taking stock of the campaign and the news wasn't good. Donations were drying up. Big names were urging Biden to step down and Trump was riding high. And so on Saturday evening, they looked at some poll numbers. Again, nothing good. Trump was building on his lead in the swing states and that apparently was that final nail in the coffin. Reports say Biden had made up his mind on Saturday night. He decided to pull out by Saturday night. The next day on Sunday, he held another round of talks, sort of like a last-minute check. And then he broke the news to the world. Joe Biden first called his Vice President Kamala Harris. He informed her of his decision. And then he called his White House Chief of Staff at around 1:45 p.m. local time. Biden's team was informed of his final decision. Around the same time, an official letter was posted on X, Twitter. And just like that, Joe Biden's campaign was over. I guess it was like the perfect storm. Recovering from an illness miles away from the White House and surrounded by family, it probably cleared the president's mind. Maybe it helped him see the writing on the wall. It was definitely a weekend that changed US politics. But getting here was tough. A mix of fate, politics and narratives. This time, last month, Biden was the undisputed nominee. He was neck and neck with Donald Trump. But in 25 days, he lost the White House. Let's look at the key events in that time. During April, Joe Biden proposed a televised debate with Trump. Normally, these debates would happen after the convention. But Biden said, let's have it before. In hindsight, that decision burned his campaign. The debate was held on the 27th of June and Biden's performance was a disaster. That was last month. He looked weak and tired, his voice was raspy and low, and his sentences often made no sense.
What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 million, billion dollars, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have, our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about.
After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties?
President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized as being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing.
Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood. that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match.
That was a wake-up call for the Democrats. They realized that Biden's health had deteriorated. So the party rebellion began. At first, it was the state leaders and congressmen. None of the big wigs joined in. They wanted to see where things went. And Joe Biden dug in. He admitted that he wasn't young or energetic, but he vowed to push on. Biden went immediately into damage control. He started giving more interviews on television. He also began talking up the NATO summit. Washington hosted this meeting earlier this month, the NATO summit. So all eyes were on Joe Biden. Would the president redeem himself, or would he stumble again? Take a look at what happened.
Would look to you personally, not anybody else, not other pundits, not even perhaps family members, that you would look to say, if I see that, I will reevaluate?
If there is some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings is a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country, in spite of the fact that we were told we couldn't get it done.
Is there any
Secretary General Stoltenberg, would you come forward? So much of the progress we've made in the alliance is thanks to the Secretary. He's a man of integrity and intellectual rigor, a calm temperament in a moment of crisis, a consummate diplomat who works with leaders across the political spectrum and always finds a way to keep us moving forward. Secretary, you've guided this alliance through one of the most consequential periods in its history. I realize, I was talking to your wife, I personally asked you to extend your service. Forgive me. And you put your own plans on hold. When the Russian war in Ukraine began, you didn't hesitate. Today, NATO is stronger, smarter, and more energized than when you began. And 1 billion people across Europe and North America, indeed the whole world, will reap the rewards of your labor for years to come in the form of security, opportunity, and greater freedom. For these reasons, I'm pleased to award you the highest civilian honor of the United States.
There it is. You can see it for yourself. Biden's age, ill health, and his lack of cognitive sharpness. And after that, it goes without saying, the floodgates opened. Hollywood actor George Clooney joined this rebellion. Now you must know he's a top Democratic donor. He asked Biden to step aside. That's when the second key event happened, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. It sharpened the contrast between the two men. Trump was defiant after the shooting. He got up, he pumped his fist, and he shouted, "Fight!" You couldn't imagine Biden doing that. Which brings us to the third key event that turned the tide. The party bigwigs got involved. Yes, among them, two names stand out. First is the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and the second is Barack Obama. Both of them have worked closely with Joe Biden. They're also very popular among the voters. Neither of them went public with their views. Instead, they leaked reports to the US media. Obama's comments came in last week. He said Biden's path to re-election had diminished. That's the term he used, diminished. Which brings us to the weekend, this past weekend. Biden had just two choices left: ignore the rebellion and stay on, or give in to party pressure. The first option, staying on, would have been incredibly risky. Maybe a vital, charismatic candidate could afford a loan, use his own brand to stay in the race, but not Joe Biden. He would have needed party support to take on Donald Trump. Plus, this was his last chance. A loss would have destroyed his legacy. So in the end, Biden did make the only decision that made sense. He stepped aside and passed the torch to Kamala Harris. Take a look at this report.
I'm in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. America's going to have to choose between moving forward or backward, between hope and hate, between unity and division. We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter? I believe I know the answer to these questions because I know you, the American people. And I know this: we are a great nation because we are good people. When you elected me to this office, I promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. And the truth, the sacred cause of this country, is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause, cherish it so much, a cause of American democracy itself, must unite to protect it. You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward.
What kind of country do we want to live in? A country and to your point, do we want to live in a country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate? And here's the beauty of this moment. We each have the power to answer that question. The power is with the people. We each have the power to answer that question. And in the next 105 days, then we have work to do. We have doors to knock on, we have phone calls to make, we have voters to register, and we have an election to win. So as Leah told you, before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. Before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already, yes, you may clap. In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office.
There you see her, Kamala Harris, on the stage. She's going absolutely and utterly after Donald Trump. She's going full on. She's going hard on Trump. All guns blazing. And now moving on from the American electoral race to Paris. Moving to the beautiful Paris, the countdown ended day before yesterday. All eyes are on Paris, or Paris like I like to call it. It was the day that the city had been waiting for, the day of the Olympics. The games officially opened day before yesterday. They will continue till the 11th of August, and France is leaving no stone unturned. After all, it's the first time that they are hosting the games in a century. Paris last hosted the Olympics in 1924. So it's been exactly 100 years. The opening ceremony was quite the spectacle. Let's take a look. France has called it the biggest open-air show ever. And must I say, they are not exaggerating. More than 8,000 athletes glided down the Seine River, almost like a sporting armada. There were light shows, dancers, acrobats, floating pianos, helicopters, and even a few submarines. Watching them from the banks were 300,000 people, along with 100 heads of state and other important leaders. At the Paris Olympics, 117 athletes make up the Indian contingent in 16 sport disciplines, comprising 70 men and 47 women. Now they will be competing in 69 different events for 95 medals. Approximately 10,500 athletes will compete across 32 sports in 329 events at the Games. And now it's time to take a closer look at India. Yes, let's move on to national news now. Let's take a closer look at India now, closer home. Union Minister Chirag Paswan's statement addresses the controversy surrounding the Niti Aayog meeting and West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's actions. He denies allegations that anyone's microphone was switched off during the meeting, dismissing such claims as utterly and absolutely false. Paswan criticizes Mamata Banerjee's decision to aggressively leave the meeting, describing her behavior as unprofessional and inappropriate. He suggests that her actions appeared to be a part of a calculated strategy by the opposition to create chaos and to attract attention. Paswan emphasizes that Niti Aayog is a forum where states can voice their grievances and address any perceived injustices. His remarks reflect the political discourse surrounding the Niti Aayog meeting, highlighting differing perspectives on the conduct of the participating leaders and the purpose of such high-level gatherings for both state and central government coordination.
देखिए उस बैठक में नीति आयोग की उस बैठक में मैं भी मौजूद था और ये सरासर गलत इल्ज़ाम है कि किसी का माइक वहाँ पे बंद कर दिया गया। पहली बात तो जब ये विपक्ष बोलता है कि माइक बंद कर दे, उस माइक का कंट्रोल वहाँ पे बैठे किसी भी व्यक्ति के हाथ में नहीं होता है, उस व्यक्ति के खुद के हाथ में होता है। ना लोकसभा में, ना राज्यसभा में, ना ऐसी किसी बैठकों में। ऐसी बैठक में माइक सामने लगा होता है, ऑन ऑफ का स्विच सामने ही होता है। तो ये बात बोलना सरासर झूठ है जब कोई ये बोलता है कि मेरा माइक बंद कर दिया गया। हाँ, हर मुख्यमंत्री को, क्योंकि समय की बाध्यता थी, ओपन एंडेड अगर डिस्कशन को रखा जाता तो संभवतः हफ्तों तक ये बैठक ही चलती रहती। ऐसे में हर मुख्यमंत्री से ये विनम्रता पूर्वक आग्रह किया गया था कि अपनी बातों को संक्षेप में एक तय समय सीमा के भीतर रखा जाए। जब वो समय सीमा पूरी हुई, सिर्फ एक रिमाइंडर के तौर पर उनको ज़रूर, जैसे तमाम मुख्यमंत्री को दोबारा से नोटिफाई किया गया कि भाई आपका समय समाप्त हो रहा है, इस तरीके से। बट उसके बाद जिस तरीके से बंगाल की मुख्यमंत्री ममता बनर्जी जी एकदम से उत्तेजित होकर उस
Mayor Shelly Oberoi's response to the tragic incident at the coaching center in Old Rajendra Nagar in New Delhi conveys several key points. The first, condolences and immediate action. She expresses sadness over the loss of 3 lives and emphasizes the need for swift action. Oberoi has written to the MCD Commissioner to take strict action against these coaching centers across Delhi that violate the building bylaws, specifically those using basements for commercial activities, contrary to the regulations. Building certifications and violations, that's number 2 on her agenda. Oberoi mentions that the building in Rajendra Nagar where this incident occurred was certified in 2021 with specific guidelines that the basement should only be used for parking and storage. This suggests that the coaching center's use of the basement for other purposes may have violated these clear stipulations. Point 3 on her agenda: focus on accountability. She urges against playing the blame game and stresses the importance of holding responsible parties accountable for any lapses or violations that contributed to this tragedy. Let's take a look. Meanwhile, Swati Maliwal, an Aam Aadmi Party leader, has strongly criticized the Delhi government and other officials in response to the tragic incident at the coaching center in Old Rajendra Nagar in Delhi. While speaking to the media, she highlighted several demands and concerns regarding the handling of the situation. First, demand for an FIR against the government officials. Maliwal has demanded that an FIR be registered against, and I'm quoting here, all the big government officials whom she holds responsible for this incident. She perceives the deaths as a result of negligence rather than a natural disaster. Second point on her agenda was compensation for families. She has called for a compensation of rupees 1 crore to be provided to the families of each deceased student, emphasizing the gravity of the loss suffered by the victims' families. In addition to that, she highlighted the need for criticism, striking criticism of the absent officials. Maliwal criticized the absence of the Delhi government ministers, the mayor of MCD or the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, and other officials from the site, despite more than 12 hours passing since the incident occurred. She believes that their presence and apology are absolutely necessary in the light of this tragedy. Next on her agenda was commitment to raise this issue in the parliament. She pledged to raise the students' demands and the incident itself in the parliament, ensuring that the issue receives national attention and accountability is sought from the responsible authorities. Furthermore, allegations of prior warning. Maliwal mentioned that students had reportedly informed the local councillor about the poor drainage system in the area 12 days prior to this horrific incident. She holds the councillor and the higher authorities accountable for not addressing these concerns adequately. Let's take a look at what she has to say.
कीजिए, ये एंजॉयमेंट है। ये जितने भी लोग हैं इन्हें यहाँ आना चाहिए, मंत्री को तुरंत आना। बच्चे बहुत दुखी हैं और बहुत गुस्से में हैं। 12 घंटे से ज्यादा हो गए हैं, अभी तक ना तो दिल्ली सरकार का कोई मंत्री आया है, ना ही एमसीडी की मेयर आई है, कोई अधिकारी नहीं आया है। मैं ये मानती हूँ कि ये जो मौत हुई है ये कोई डिजास्टर नहीं है, ये सीधे सीधे मर्डर है। ये जितने भी सरकार के बहुत बड़े बड़े नुमाइंदे हैं, इन सब पे एफआईआर होनी चाहिए, सबकी जिम्मेदारी बनती है। जितने बच्चे मरे हैं उन सबके घर में जाकर 1 करोड़ की कॉम्पनसेशन इंडिविजुअली देनी चाहिए। बच्चे बहुत दुखी हैं और बहुत गुस्से में हैं, और क्यों ना हो। 12 घंटे से ज्यादा हो गए हैं, अभी तक ना तो दिल्ली सरकार का कोई मंत्री आया है, ना ही एमसीडी की मेयर आई है, कोई अधिकारी नहीं आया है, इन बच्चों को अपने हाल पे छोड़ा हुआ है। मैं ये मानती हूँ कि ये जो मौत हुई है ये कोई डिजास्टर नहीं है, ये सीधे सीधे मर्डर है। एफआईआर दर्ज होनी चाहिए। ये जितने भी सरकार के बहुत बड़े बड़े नुमाइंदे हैं, इन सब पे एफआईआर होनी चाहिए, सबकी जिम्मेदारी बनती है। नंबर 1। नंबर 2, ये बच्चे देश के अलग अलग कोनों से यूपीएससी की तैयारी करने दिल्ली आते हैं, बहुत बड़े बड़े सपने लेकर आते हैं। इनके माँ बाप कैसे कैसे कर कर इन्हें दिल्ली भेजते हैं, और उसके बाद इन बच्चों की इतनी दर्दनाक मौत होगी और कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया जाएगा। सबसे जरूरी है, ये जितने भी बच्चे मरे, अभी तो पता ही नहीं चल पा रहा कि 3 मरे हैं या ज्यादा मरे हैं, जितने बच्चे मरे हैं उन सबके घर में जाकर 1 करोड़ की कॉम्पनसेशन इंडिविजुअली देनी चाहिए। और तीसरी बात, ये जो मंत्री और मेयर ने तो भी कुछ दिन पहले बोला था कि मॉनसून आने वाला है, दिल्ली वाले एंजॉय कीजिए। ये एंजॉयमेंट है? ये जितने भी लोग हैं इन्हें यहाँ आना चाहिए, मंत्री को तुरंत आना चाहिए, मेयर को तुरंत आना चाहिए, इन बच्चों का गुस्सा झेलना चाहिए और इनसे माफी मांगनी चाहिए। ऐसे दिल्ली नहीं चलेगी, दिल्ली देश की राजधानी है। आई एम गोइंग टू रेज दिस वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इशू इन द पार्लियामेंट।
सरकार ने जांच के आदेश दिए, 24 घंटे में रिपोर्ट तलब की है, उसको लेकर क्या कहना है आपका?
जांच तो बहुत करवाते हैं, एक्शन क्या होता है? अरे क्यों नहीं आते यहाँ पे? क्यों नहीं पुलिस से पूछते कि एफआईआर दर्ज हुई या नहीं हुई? अपने ऊपर एफआईआर करवानी चाहिए इन्हें। ये बैठ के एयर कंडीशन कमरों में बार बार प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करते हैं, ऐसे दिखाते हैं दिल्ली बहुत शानदार है। कहाँ से शानदार हो रखी है दिल्ली? आप देखिए गली गली में तो ये इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की लाइनें निकली हुई है। अभी कुछ दिन पहले एक बच्चे को मर्डर हो गया। तो ये कोई तरीका है? ये जांच बिल्कुल बेमानी है, एफआईआर होनी चाहिए, इन सब के ऊपर एक्शन होना चाहिए। और वो काउंसलर कहाँ है? बच्चे बता रहे हैं कि 12 दिन पहले से बार बार काउंसलर को बोला गया था कि ड्रेनेज सिस्टम खराब है, तो उस काउंसलर की बिल्कुल सीधे जवाबदेही नहीं बनती, और उसके जितने भी ऊपर के लोग हैं सबकी जवाबदेही बनती। बच्चे बहुत दुखी हैं और बहुत गुस्से में हैं।
And now it's time to zoom in on the ongoing Amarnath Yatra in India. The holy Amarnath Yatra, which has been gaining importance and momentum across the country, is now threatened by violence. Intelligence sources have received information that Pakistan's ISI has conspired to create a havoc in this holy pilgrimage. In fact, they have issued a warning. A plan has been drawn up for the destructive attack during the pilgrimage. Intelligence sources have shared that Punjab gangsters and the radical groups could have joined hands with the terrorist organizations for this attack. Sources have warned that the ISI is planning to wreak havoc, targeting the BJP leaders and the Hindu people in Punjab and Delhi. Furthermore, intelligence officials suspect that 7 terrorists have already infiltrated into the Jammu and Kashmir area to wreak havoc in the country. During the investigations, intelligence agencies detected movement of these suspected terrorists with advanced weapons in a village near Pathankot. Also, there is a rising suspicion of Pakistan's conspiracy behind the attacks on the security forces in the Jammu region for the past few days. In the wake of these developments, alerted officials are continuing an extensive search operation in the concerned areas. On the other hand, alerted Indian forces in the wake of terror conspiracy warnings have made strong security arrangements for the Amarnath Yatra. Meanwhile, the holy Amarnath Yatra kick-started on June 29th, that was last month. Lakhs of devotees come from all over the country every year to visit the Manchulinga, which is it's been formed naturally in the Amarnath caves at the Anantnag district of Jammu and Kashmir. Since the beginning of this year's Yatra, 4 lakh devotees have visited the Amarlingeshwar. Pilgrims usually take about 4 to 5 days to reach this cave. This trip lasts for about 52 days, and this year's Amarnath Yatra is slated to end on August 19th. Let's take a look at these visuals. Do you like hot dogs? Can you eat 5 of them in 10 minutes? How about 10 or 20? What about 76 hot dogs in just 10 minutes? I know it sounds impossible, but it has been done. 76 hot dogs is only 7 short of a maximum capacity for humans. But it is a world record, and it was set at a competitive eating event where participants push their bodies. They compete to eat the maximum amount of food in a limited amount of time. They chomp their way to victory, but often pay a heavy price for it. The side effects include, ironically, the lack of hunger. So why do people compete as speed eaters? Is it a legit sport? Why does it have such a vast fan base? Here's a report. Now, going by these visuals, contrary to what it may seem like through these spectacular visuals, competitive eating is not about gluttony. It's not about overeating. It's not about a love of food. That is easy. Competitive eating, on the other hand, takes skill. Like all sports, speed eating is a body and mind game. Both these have to be trained, and speed eaters go to many lengths to do so. How, you may ask? Eating titans start with expanding their stomach capacity. There are elite regimes to do this, but the most common one is this. Eaters drink vast volumes of liquid. Now this could be water, watermelon juice, or even soda. Their volume expands the stomach quickly because it's easier to process liquids. The second step is to improve their technique. Like when eating hot dogs, competitive eaters follow what's called the Solomon method, named after King Solomon, who, as the legend goes, threatened to cut a baby in 2. Elite eaters do the same to a hot dog. They split the meat and the bread, then they drown the bread in water and down it quickly. Then they chomp their way to victory through the sausage. Now this is way faster than eating an entire hot dog at once. Research says that human speed eaters have become so fast that they can eat faster than wild animals, including bears and coyotes. And how much do they usually eat? Well, now that depends on what they're eating. But for hot dogs, which is the favorite, the record is 76 hot dogs in 10 minutes. While you chew that thought, let's take the obvious. Speed eating is dangerous. Over the past few years, it has become a glamorous sport with a serious fan following. But the competitors pay a heavy price for it. Some eaters consume so much food during the competition that by the end of it, they're out of breath, because the heavy amount of food shifts their organs. It stops their lungs from expanding and they can't breathe easily. Now this is a short-term issue. Long-term competitors stop feeling hunger altogether. That's because the mind is so used to feeling full, so eaters sometimes go for days without any food. They just don't feel hungry. What's more, speed eaters can have unhealthy diets because much of what they eat at these competitions is junk food. So they can develop heart disease and diabetes. On top of that, speed eaters could develop something known as aerophagia, a rare medical condition where speed eaters gulp huge volumes of air along with their food. The increased volume of air in their esophagus then puts pressure on the diaphragm, causing them to burp or belch unstoppably. Quite a rare medical condition though, as it is mostly triggered by chronic stress or anxiety, but elite eaters could develop it over long-term speed eating. But probably the biggest downside is this: choking. Elite competitors eat so quickly they don't chew their food properly and they choke on the food, which can result in death. Well, it takes guts to be a competitive eater, but many are willing to push their bodies because to them this is what a full life looks like, pun intended. Let's take a look. Before our last story tonight, let me ask you a question. Despite getting adequate sleep, have you ever woken up with a fuzzy head, a queasy feeling, and a pit in your stomach? If yes, you could be suffering from a hangover even if you were completely sober the night before. We are talking about an emotional hangover. What does it mean? It is the emotional residue from the events of the previous day. Much like an alcohol hangover, an emotional hangover is a physical repercussion, which is why you can wake up feeling physically tired and emotionally drained. A disclaimer here: emotional hangover is not an official medical term, but experts say it is a common phenomenon. Why is that? Because life can be stressful. Oops, it is stressful. It's as simple as that. Today, humans are more stressed than ever before. 4 in 10 people regularly experience a lot of stress the world over. And when you fall asleep at night, this stress doesn't just walk away. We are not blank slates every morning. Let me tell you why. On any given day, different people have different stressors. It could be a fight, a conflict, a disagreement, news about wars and famines, a horror movie, or even a small interaction with an energy vampire. An energy vampire, that's someone who saps your energy. There is a long list, but big or small, these are all emotional experiences and they manifest as physical reactions. Talk about the mind-body connection. Mental stress trickles into the physical body in the form of symptoms, which in the long term could manifest into the psychosomatic disorders. Our minds and bodies are connected. When we are stressed, our fight or flight system is activated. Stress hormones are released. Our brain has a mental tug of war. It manages different emotions at once, like anger and anxiety. At the same time, the brain tempers our emotions with logic and decisions. It tries to respond rationally. That's a lot of management. That's quite a lot of management, all at the same time. And these mental acrobatics can be, in fact they are, exhausting, mentally, emotionally and physically. So when the moment passes, the body goes into the damage repair mode. The brain digests all the information, the body tries to rest, and this process is crucial. It demands not only energy but your time as well. Now sleep helps to speed this up, but sometimes sleep is not enough, which is why there is a spillover on the next day, and this is what is called an emotional hangover. This phenomenon both natural and pervasive. It is natural and pervasive, so don't worry, but its intensity varies depending on 2 things: the event and the person. For instance, emotional hangovers are more common among highly sensitive people like empaths or those with social anxiety or just anxiety by and large. To them, a minor argument can become amplified and lead to a hangover the next day. But to the less sensitive, it could be a social glitch, just a blip, with fewer and milder repercussions. And the reaction is completely subjective, and so are the solutions to cope with it. 42% adults reportedly go online. They use the internet as a coping mechanism, be it scrolling on reels or watching a TV show. And this may distract you, but let me tell you, screen time is not a hangover fix. In fact, it is training. So what is the sure shot first aid kit for it, for an emotional hangover? According to experts, you can use alcohol hangover cures, rest and water. This will help conserve your energy. Once that is covered, try some moderate exercise, meet some friends or do what gives you joy. This will replenish your emotional fuel and most of all, give yourself a break. Emotional hangovers are simply human, and just like it is with alcohol, they get easier when you build stronger tolerance. So try to set better and stronger boundaries. Actively process uncomfortable emotions and maybe, just maybe, consider abstinence from whatever fuels your emotional hangovers, like a toxic job or a toxic relationship. I know it's a big ask, but it can also bring big rewards. Give it a thought. For all you know, the next emotional hangover may have a sobering effect on you. That's all for now in the National Primetime this week. Thank you for making CVR News English nationwide strong. We are counting on you for support, and you can trust us to bring you the news from India and from the world, unfiltered and unvarnished. This is ANUKRITI Sharma signing off for now. Keep watching CVR News Primetime for more compelling stories from across the national political spectrum.